I got my realisation in London at the first ashram and lived in Brighton, where I had a pretty good job actually. I'd only got a job and settled down after I had realisation. It helped enormously in my future. I've been working with people in the music industry at that point, some of them who are now enormously famous and who I'd given bandans. I won't mention any names, but a friend of mine writes a lot of music for the film industry. So I'd sort of got into this doing computers and the early stuff of the 80s, very, 79, 80, 81. And the yogis in Brighton were a very sweet bunch. There was Kay O'Connell and her husband and a couple of kids, and Pamela and Terry and a few others whose name was Leslie and her little daughter called Aniki, and a lot of other very, very sweet people in Brighton. And we had a little house where Pamela held meetings, and Pamela also had a shop which Mother used to visit, Pamela used to call it the Boon, which was pretty good name for it, full of Indian stuff. Pamela was kind of a really original Sahaja Yogi that had travelled the world in a sort of beat up old Volkswagen and brought back stuff from India, and kind of naturally slotted into some of the more Indian aspects of Sahaja Yoga. So the story is about hypnotism and people overpowering people with their, one might say, malevolent ways. The early yogas were learning about, I suppose, discrimination between different people and the way that they work. And we had it was a pretty tight bunch, about 10 or 15 people, and we all sort of clubbed together. And I had a friend from Sheffield, a girlfriend called, I can't even remember her name now. Anyway, she came down, Ray Harris's friend as well, and she came down and she met this guy called Michael. And this Michael guy was a tall guy with a beard, and he looked quite kind of biblical and angelic. And so all the ladies sort of immediately sort of gravitated towards him and felt very comfortable with him. And he then sort of, as we learnt later, pretended to do Sahaja Yoga for sort of a means of extending his hypnotic personality over them. So as things progressed, after a few meetings, he would come round and sit with the yogis and talk to them. And they all started to become enormously convinced that he was the reincarnation, get this, of the Archangel Gabriel. Not any sort of minor deity, but just like, top-notch archangel, wings temporarily put in the cupboard somewhere. And me being a little bit kind of technical and a bit kind of reactionary, I didn't believe one single word of it. But unfortunately, the yogis, especially the ladies who really liked this chap, started to get overwhelmed by him. And I don't know what kind of stuff he was doing, but he was just sitting there. And this sort of progressed, for one or two meetings, and I started to see that the Sahaja Yoginis especially were being turned away from Mother. Ostensibly, they thought they were doing a good thing. They were expecting this bloke this long-haired weirdo to start spouting off some kind of Gabrielic, enormously speaking in tongues or whatever they do in their spare time. Anyway, he progressed in his endeavours to produce a state of hypnosis in Brighton. So I came off shift one night in my little yellow beat-up car that I crashed a few times, and the boss was very angry with me every time I crashed it. I think I'd hit a police car that day, so I wasn't in a very good mood, or I'd hit a London bus or something. So I came in and noticed this chap, Michael, sitting with his back to Mother's picture. And Terry, who was a lovely guy, he was sitting looking at Mother's picture and not looking very comfortable. And I had this kind of vision of like maybe 10 yogis and yoginis all looking at Michael, holding their hands out to him. and he was looking at them, and I said, what are you doing? This is a bit nonsensical. You should be looking at Mother's picture. So one of the yoginis, I think it was Pamela, said, sit down, Paul, and be quiet. Stop being yourself, basically. So no, I'm not pulling up that nonsense. And I walked straight up to Shri Mataji's picture, and I bowed down to it. I held my hands together in the normal way that one would worship. And with Terry and I, we did Mother's mantra. And there was a sort of very cold and dark feeling from behind me, as all the other yogis were a bit probably uncomfortable with me doing that. Anyway, I stormed out, and I rocked off, or stoned off down to the beach. And I sat there, and I just thought, okay, this entity is doing something to the yogis here, and I think it's not a very good thing. It's awfully bad. So I picked up the largest stones on Brighton Beach, because it's all stony and horrible. Picked up a couple of large stones and whacked them together and said Mother's mantra. And every time I whacked these stones together, I tried to think of his different chakras. So the representation in my own mind was that I was breaking his chakras with crushing the stones into bits on the beach. Probably a few bits flew off and hit me in the face, but that wasn't really anything important. And then Ray Harris and I went round. Oh, the lady's name was Maria. She was a really lovely lady, but she was completely flummoxed by this bloke and living with him. So me and Ray Harris sort of, good brothers, got together, and we shot off round to Maria's house and banged on the door and said, Maria, come on, get out of there quick before the guy burns you. He's obviously some kind of a hoodwinker. And poor old Maria was shouting out, no, I love him, and everything, and all that other nonsense you get. So me and Ray shot off and completely forgot about it. And in a puja, and a couple of weeks after that, Shri Mataji sort of came up to me. I felt tremendous vibrations coming in the room. We were in a building that was a country house that was owned by the Labour Party, and it had big sort of communistic murals on the wall. It was absolutely lovely setting, beautiful gardens and manicured lawns and everything. Yogis used to pick the best places to have pujas and things. And right at the end of the puja, we were singing Mother's mantra. Shri Mataji came up to me and put her hand on my face, and she just said, look after Brighton, Paul. So I felt, sort of somewhat overwhelmed, really, at that point. And a little bit later on, we were up in London at one of the ashrams that the yogis had got together, and Shri Mataji was sitting there, and we were all sitting on the lawn, including all the Brighton Sahaja Yogis and all the London yogis and a few others from all over the place. And it was a beautifully sunny day, and I was sitting in the middle. Mother started recanting or narrating, or whatever you call it, the story about this Michael chap that had overthrown Brighton. So obviously somebody had told her what had happened, and she was well informed about it. And she had given this basically as a kind of a test, I would have thought. So she pointed at me and she said, so what did you do about it, Paul? And so I put my two thumbs in my ears and waggled my fingers about and poked my tongue out, and Mother burst out laughing. So I'm probably one of the only yogis that has got away with sticking his thumbs in his ears and waggling them. And Shri Mataji thought it was really funny, so that cheered me up no end. But it was a good story, and it was a good thing to do, a good thing to remember, that people have extremely powerful consciousness, and it's not obvious, and it's quite subtle. And it's the sort of thing that I suppose politicians and dictators and egotists use, and they just sit there and they influence people. And now they have, of course, the tendrils spread out from the words in their mouths and the thoughts in their minds, and it goes out through media, which makes it a damn sight worse. And we can see evidence of that now in society. So yeah, that was one story early on in the days. So Jai Shri Mataji, and I'll think of a few more, and hopefully they will entertain you. Jai Shri Mataji.